Welcome back to Solve Crimes with Rick and Gavin. My name is Gavin Fish. In today's episode, we're going to continue Treated Like Trash, our investigation into the 2008 death of 20-year-old Amanda Wienckowski in Buffalo, New York. If you're new to our show, you can catch up on this case by visiting our website, solvecrimeswithrickandgavin.com. Or if you're on YouTube, you can see the previous 3 episodes. They are videos number 12, 13, and 15. We'll leave a link in the description below. And if you're listening to the podcast, they're episodes 9, 10, and 12. Today we're going to dig into a subject that over the course of our investigation has been the source of huge frustration for me. And that is the questionable job the medical examiner did on her report of the autopsy she performed on Amanda. And the inexplicable reason local Buffalo media let her get away with it when the second autopsy came out. So we hope you'll stick around. This is Solve Crimes. When Dr. Diane Vertes, or Vertes, I know I'm mispronouncing it, but however her name is pronounced, when she published her autopsy report, she determined that Amanda's cause of death was acute opioid intoxication. So basically an accidental overdose. In our previous episode, Rick and I discussed why we think she was wrong to conclude that, including reading an interpretation of Amanda's toxicology report from a forensic toxicologist named Donald Hoffman. You can head over to Amanda's case page on our website, solvecrimeswithrickandgavin.com, to read Dr. Hoffman's report. But in short, Dr. Hoffman stated that the toxicological findings couldn't be regarded as having caused the death of Amanda Wienckowski. Rather, he said, they were incidental to her death. The cause of death, he notes after having examined the second autopsy report submitted by Dr. Silvia Comparini, was strangulation. With that, I want to show you a report from WIVB News, Channel 4, a local TV station in Buffalo, New York. This report was broadcast on January 6th, 2012.
Some new developments in the mysterious death of Amanda Wienckowski. 2 separate autopsies are still telling 2 different stories. News 4's Dr. Peter Ostro spoke exclusively to the Erie County Medical Examiner. Doctor?
Jackie, the findings in the 2 autopsies were startlingly different. So the Erie County Medical Examiner reviewed the case again and didn't change her mind. She discussed the discrepancies with me this afternoon. What happened to Amanda Wienckowski? Can an autopsy tell for sure? The Erie County Medical Examiner's office ruled that her death was due to a drug overdose, but her family thought she had been murdered. They contacted a pathologist in California who re-examined the body and concluded she had been strangled and had struggled. But Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Diane Vertes doesn't accept that. She had looked for it.
Because my suspicion is high and she comes in as she does, of course I'm suspecting that it's a homicide. So I'm looking for that.
Was she strangled? Dr. Vertes says no.
What you look for in manual strangulation then are all of these muscles inside your neck. We reflect each one individually, and we're looking for bruises in those muscles.
And those bruises weren't there. When the outside pathologist's findings were revealed at a press conference, the attorneys showed me pictures that were claimed to display the effects of strangulation and struggle, but they weren't persuasive.
She points to no picture to show that, although I don't know how she could, and there's no evidence in any photomicrograph or anything that she provided that could show me what she's talking about.
But there was a high level of drugs in the body.
Does this meet the standard? Is this enough for a person to have died from? Yes, it is.
Dr. Vertes and her colleagues maintain their original diagnosis was correct.
Every person that comes in here has a story, and they're often very tragic stories. But sad events don't necessarily translate to what a family thinks happens to their child or their loved one.
We discussed several other points of contention. The claims by the outside pathologist aren't documented by photos, and Dr. Verdes has a well-reasoned rebuttal for each one. Our entire interview will be posted on our website, wivb.com, for you to see. For News 4, I'm Dr. Peter Ostrow of the UB Medical School.
I've scoured the internet to see if I can find the full interview that Dr. Ostrow said they posted to their website. I can't find it anywhere. Channel 4 doesn't have it on any public archive, so I guess we're just going to work with what we got. I think what I'm going to do here is go over a couple of excerpts from Dr. Verdes' report and then see what Dr. Comparini had to say about it. Then we'll start looking at some of the evidence. In Dr. Verdes' autopsy report on line 52, it says there are no injuries of the neck. Later on lines 125 through 128, she says, and this is a long quote, examination of the soft tissues, cartilaginous and bony structures of the neck, including a complete anterior and posterior neck dissection, demonstrates no abnormalities with the usual anatomic relationships preserved. There are no intramuscular hemorrhages or fractures of the hyoid bone or laryngeal cartilages demonstrated. What she's talking about here are the main clues that usually lead an examiner to point towards strangulation. But I want to bring up something else that I noticed in Dr. Verdes' report. It's on lines 49 and 50. And this is what they say. It's very short. The tongue is described elsewhere. But nowhere in the rest of the report is the tongue talked about at all. Which, makes me wonder, did Dr. Verdes just copy and paste a prepared paragraph? Now, I wouldn't blame her if she did. I do that in business, and lawyers do it all the time. But was she so rushed that she just copied and pasted in a paragraph that included that sentence, but never actually examined Amanda's tongue? And the 3 other medical examiners that signed off on this autopsy report, did they not notice that? Now that I'm thinking about it, is it possible this entire autopsy report is just boilerplate with very little actual reporting of the examination? And is that why Erie County worked so hard in court to fight Leslie when she wanted to exhume Amanda and have the second autopsy done? And then later, is that the reason they withheld tissue samples and organs from Dr. Comparini? They put up a serious fight. Okay, let's go see what Dr. Comparini has to say about Amanda's neck. On page 27 of Dr. Comparini's report, there's a section titled Manual Strangulation. Starting on line 22 of that page, it reads, the neck organs, including the tongue, hyoid bone, larynx, including the distal portions of the trachea, were not found in the biohazard red plastic bag contained in the thoracoabdominal cavity. For those of you who, like me a couple of months ago, didn't know, when an autopsy is performed, at the end of the autopsy, all of the tissues and organs that were removed from the body are put back into a biohazard bag, and those are placed into the empty cavity of the decedent's body. When Dr. Comparini received Amanda's remains and opened the bag, all of the neck tissues and organs were missing. But wait a minute, on line 25, it says, see photograph number 50. Didn't Dr. Verdes say something about no photos?
She points to no picture to show that, although I don't know how she could.
So Dr. Verdes says that Dr. Comparini didn't provide any photographic evidence demonstrating what she was talking about. Let's come back to this one. Dr. Comparini's description of the external injuries of the neck begins on page 29 of her report. 29. Holy crap, this thing is 78 pages long. Dr. Verdes' entire report is 6 pages long. Okay, so page 29, starting on line 7, Dr. Comparini describes 3 oval-shaped contusions located primarily at the thyroid notch, or Adam's apple, It refers us to Exhibit 4, which is the exhibit Dr. Ostro talked about in his news report. But that's not the only reference this section makes. It also says to take a look at photos 11, 43, 62, 6, 7, 25, JPF 0016, JPF 0017, JPF 0025, JPF 0026, JPF 0050, JPF 0062, JPF 0063, and diagram 1. And then she goes on to describe the interior injuries of the neck, and she finds multiple hemorrhages and refers to the photographs JPF 0076, 0077, 0002, 0078, 0021, and exhibits 1 and 1A. She notes hemorrhages in the artery, jugular vein, bite marks on the tongue, and severe congestion of the thyroid gland. She then refers the reader to 10 more images, 4 more exhibits, a diagram, and a page later on in the report. This report goes on and on in great detail with an extreme amount of care put into documenting photographically and through hand-noted diagrams. Now, both autopsy reports, by the way, are available for review on our website, solvecrimeswithrickandgavin.com. Just go to our website and browse over to Amanda's case page. In Dr. Comparini's report, you'll see all of the diagrams and exhibits. What you won't find are the photographs referenced in the report. We have them, we have all of them, but to protect Leslie's emotional well-being, we're not going to publish those.
Claims by the outside pathologist aren't documented by photos, and Dr. Verdes has a well-reasoned rebuttal for each one.
The claims made by the outside pathologist aren't documented by photos, and Dr. Verdes has a well-reasoned rebuttal for each one. That's what Dr. Peter Ostro said. And that last part might be true. But the first part, that is a complete and utter lie. Dr. Comparini's quote-unquote claims are documented by 294 photos and 16 diagrams. It is completely convincing. And misinformation like this, spread by Buffalo's News 4 team and a professor of pathology nonetheless, that has contributed to the public's apathy toward Amanda's case. And that apathy has translated into zero public pressure on the DA's office to reopen the case. It's outrageous. And Rick, I'd really love to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of them because this case is just, I mean, this episode lays it out that there's just so much to go through, not just with documents, but it's, you know, Gavin, the one word that comes to mind when I look at all the information in this, you know, prior to us talking here on this episode, the word is politics. And we all know that's part of life, but for me, I think you're the same way. I strive to, you know, we all play the game, whatever part of our lives, you know, work or whatever. We all play that game, but I hope that we all also have integrity for the truth. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially when it comes to hurting other people. And in this case, I think there was politics that were being played, and we don't even know how far up they go. That's kind of what we're doing on this, on this case, is trying to discover how high up these politics went. You know, was this a trickle down, or did it start right there at the medical examiner's office? I mean,
well, we know from our last episode, we showed that letter between a police captain and the police commissioner where he was going into a meeting and he was going to tell the DA, we got to stop this whole thing where you tell us what we have to do, because the police force and the prosecutors, they work hand in hand, but they don't.
I thought it was a real well-written letter too. I mean,
I thought so too.
He's like, the precedence that we've set has to reset.
Yeah. The pendulum has swung too far. Right. So I think it goes at least as high as the DA. The thing that really angered me about this, though, is that the media went along with it. At least Channel 4 did.
Yeah. Because the guy who presented it, was a doctor, right?
He was a pathologist, and he said that he read the whole report, and he said that the outside pathologist provides no photographic proof, and yet there's almost 300 photographs.
Let's also consider the source. I mean, this is a guy doing local news, so who knows? He may have. I mean, because Dr. Veritas is definitely well spoken. I don't think that she's a bad person. I mean, I don't think she's all. I also don't think that she's incompetent. I think she's very competent. But I think he just got assigned that piece, and he probably just heard what she said and maybe glanced at things. It didn't sound like he really dug into it. He had nothing actually to say other than to agree with everything.
I guess that really bothers me, though, because of the impact that it has on the people in Buffalo.
That's what I mean. Is that how far do you go with politics? Do you have a limit? I mean, this is messing with a whole entire family and their daughter. I mean, it's, I think I might have said this on a previous episode with you. I think that the mistake they made, whoever, wherever all this came from, as far as covering things up, I think the mistake that was made is that they assumed that this girl with a drug problem on the wrong side of town, ending up in a garbage can, they just assumed that she didn't have any family that cared. And I think they just tried to sweep it under the rug, and now they were caught with their pants down, and they're sticking with their story.
Yeah. I mean, the terrible side of that, though, is that it's been 12 years.
Yep.
And it's still under the rug, no matter how
the consequences
many of us
of playing politics
digging.
like that.
Yeah, it's bothering me. There's another thing that bothers me. I was talking with my pathologist friend, Dr. Olmsted, a couple weeks ago. In the video, Dr. Vertis or Verdes, I don't know. I get it wrong every time. But anyway, she says, of course I thought it was a homicide. She was found in a trash can. It was definitely a homicide. But I got a letter or an email from my friend Linda, who's a pathologist, and she said, overdoses end up in garbage cans all the time. They're hidden. So when she told me that, I was like, well, was Dr. Vertis looking for a homicide, or did she have a preconceived notion that, this is another junkie found in a garbage can?
Well, but then again, if that was the case, just that, why would there need to be 4 signatures from 4 medical examiners on a junkie, that nobody cared about as far as they were concerned, right? Does not make sense. I mean, I told that to Joe, our homicide detective, and I said to him, there were 4 signatures, and he went, "What?" He said
that.
I rarely find. It would be surprising to see 2 signatures on there. So there's just so many clues that we have to uncover and put these pieces of the puzzle together, because it just doesn't add up.
Let's see. The other thing that really bothers me, Rick, is the whole idea that she would have to provide photographic proof, Dr. Comparini, of the bruising on Amanda's neck and so forth. When we go,
and the way she acted, she was like, and she shows no photographic proof. So I don't know how she came to that conclusion.
Right.
And I remember when I first saw it, I called you and said, Dr. Comparini didn't take any pictures, and you went, sure she did. A lot of them.
Yeah, but let me tell you what I did. I went and I looked at Dr. Comparini's pictures. Now, keep in mind that Dr. Comparini's pictures are of a woman who has been embalmed, has been prepared by a funeral home. She's already been autopsied once, and she's been interred. Then she's been exhumed and shipped across.
And how long was she interred? Wasn't it a year and a half?
It was a long time. I can't remember the timeline, but I think it was. Doesn't matter. It was a long time, right?
Right.
Okay. So when I compare those pictures, though, Amanda had bruises on her, like on her right arm, there is like a handprint bruise, like somebody was grabbing her forearm. Mm-hmm. And that is obvious in the picture from Dr. Comparini's side. And then there are 3 bruises on the neck. It's like one right here, and then 2 on this side. It looks like somebody was reaching from behind and grabbed her like this.
Yeah.
So I was like, well,
and
maybe
who has a penchant for that?
Right. Well, we talked about his MO in the last episode, but I thought, I wonder if bruises show up later. So, I'm doing like things, I'm doing searches to try to find if there's such a thing as postmortem bruising or something. Mm-hmm. Could it have happened because of, I don't know, whatever, embalming technique or whatever. But then I was like, wait a minute, there are pictures from Dr. Vertis. So I went back to the pictures of the day the autopsy was taken. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, giant bruises on her arm, giant bruises on her neck.
That's right.
They are there in Dr. Vertis's photos.
That's right. They didn't just appear after she was interred.
That's right.
Yep. And you and I had a discussion while we were looking over some photos, just so everybody that's watching understands what we end up doing. We're not just putting on this these videos. We actually, we have to look at things that we don't want to look at. And you and I had a discussion about petechial hemorrhaging, mm-hmm. with her eyes. And in the photo that we had, her eyes were almost the whites of her eyes were almost completely red. Right. And so we had a discussion about, could that, because petechial hemorrhaging is usually spots or clumps, and still you can still see whites of the eyes. But then we were like, well, for how long? For 5 weeks, she was upside down, potentially, and frozen and all these things. So, we weren't really sure, but it is interesting that, Dr. Vertis really didn't talk about that much at all. She just excused it.
Yeah. She used words like unremarkable. This part of the body is unremarkable. That part of the body is unremarkable. And it just, Rick, it looks like boilerplate. It just looks like.
I agree with you. And not only that, the way she described everything in there, she, like you said, like just waved it all off. But then at the same time, when Dr. Comparini got the body, all the stuff from neck tissue and the hyoid bone and all that is not there. I mean, that's not standard procedure.
That part actually, that whole thing just really bothers me.
Yeah.
So I talked to my sister about this. Actually, you met my sister by phone last night. She works in the funeral industry, and so she sees this kind of thing all the time. And anyway, she described to me in details that I don't want to repeat to anybody else, kind of the things that they find as a funeral home. It is uncommon to have that stuff not there. It is common for the medical examiner to take samples of tissue, keep those on slides, right? And they keep them on file. But to have them completely withheld, that is not a normal thing.
Yes. And so I'm clear, and I think you're on the same page as me. If Dr. Vertis, if we thought she was incompetent, we would take that stance against her. But she's not incompetent. So these things that we're finding seem very deliberate.
Yes.
I don't think they expected her body to be exhumed.
Yes.
Right.
And then when Leslie goes, "Hey, Erie County, what the devil? There are parts of my daughter missing. Where are they?" Then they fight in court to keep them from Dr. Comparini.
Yeah.
And ultimately what had to happen is Dr. Comparini had to fly out to Erie County and look at everything. No, she had to go into their lab.
That's right.
And she had to look at everything there. They would not let them go. Yeah, but they did agree that she could come and take a look under their supervision.
Did they supervise her as well?
Yes. And they didn't allow any of her staff to do any work on this. The court did not allow any of.
Did they allow her to take samples?
She,
or was she just allowed to look at it?
I don't know actually if she took samples or not.
It just seems to be that's a length you wouldn't expect this situation and a professional medical examiner's office to go to.
If it's a 20-year-old junkie who just overdosed.
Right. If they were so confident in their findings, why would they fight it?
Yeah.
Really? Why would they hide it? First off, why would they keep the tissue all these, that whole time? Right. Because they did.
Yeah.
And then they fight the doctor, being able to see them. That's beyond, it's repugnant. It's professional courtesy to provide doctors with that stuff normally.
Yeah. Well,
and it's ethically responsible to do that.
Yeah. The Erie County is hiding something. At what level, we don't know. Mm-hmm. I heard from Leslie. Leslie told me directly that when Frank Sedita left for his judgeship and somebody else ran for district attorney, John Flynn ran for district attorney, and during his campaign, he promised Leslie, we're going to reopen this case. And as soon as he was put into power and I guess looked at everything, he went, oh no, we're definitely not opening this case. Yep. Like, they're hiding something. The system is hiding something.
And that's where we're trying to get into, and underneath and behind is trying to find out where that pressure came from. Was it just that the medical examiner's office dropped the ball and now they're just playing, cover your ass throughout this whole thing? That's why they're fighting it. Or did they have pressure from above them? Either the DA's office, mayor's office, we don't know. But it's one of those two. I'm telling you, this is not just it's too many. There's too many instances and examples of covering their butt, right? That shouldn't have been there if it was legitimate. Well,
and let me give this other little detail that it doesn't have anything to do with the autopsy, but it has to do with the cover up. Mm-hmm. Okay. So at 157 Spring Street, which is where Antoine Garner lived, and across the street from that is the church where Amanda was found. Right. If you were to draw a line between those two and then draw two lines out to like a triangle, there is
maybe that's happening right now in the video, because you're going to do that later, right?
Right. But there is there's like an apartment complex right there that has and had at that time cameras pointed in that direction. Mm-hmm. And when police asked for those, that video, that tape, to see, who put Amanda in or who took the garbage can to that point and from where, those tapes disappeared. And the name of that place is Friendship Manor. Those tapes have never been found. They're not part of the.
Now, who is involved with Friendship Manor that would cooperate and or hide those on their own? What's your theory?
Well, I don't have a theory of my own. I know what Leslie's theory is, and her family is that there are a couple of men in Buffalo politics, one of which is Mayor Byron Brown, and the other man is a man named Maurice Gardner.
See, there's those politics, that word again.
Yeah, who have some type of either financial or some other controlling stake in that building and just destroyed that evidence.
But why? To what end? That's what I keep thinking about when I hear this stuff. What end?
And so if there is a conspiracy to protect Antoine Garner, let's say.
Yeah, maybe that's where they had their financial stake.
Then it's a stupid, terrible conspiracy because Antoine Garner sits in prison on an 18-year stint.
Right.
Right. So they're a really bad conspiracy if the conspiracy is.
And you and I have talked about this, and maybe it's because of who put her there, because you and I have talked about this. I mean, Antoine Garner's not the genius level guy for sure, but it seems like somebody put her there in a garbage can from Antoine's neighbor purposefully to put it in
front of his house. Yeah.
To put everything together. I can't imagine that Antoine would just wheel her across the street and leave her there to be found. So it may be whoever else was involved in this, who maybe was storing her body for Antoine.
Right. And we know from DNA that there was male DNA that's unknown in Amanda's mouth. Right. There was female DNA and
there was also male DNA that was not on. We do know whose it was, right?
Well, we know that Adam Patterson's DNA was there. We know that Antoine Garner's DNA was there. Right. Then there are at least 3 men that we don't know who they are, and at least 1 woman, if my memory serves.
Yeah.
That we don't know. So there are 4 people whose DNA ended up on Amanda Wienckowski's body or in Amanda Wienckowski's body that we don't know who they are. So maybe they're protecting one of those people.
That's what I'm thinking. Yes. Whoever, there's so many, it's amazing how many people are potentially involved in, in the interactivity with her body before and after her death.
Yeah. So I think what we ought to do now is just ask people to visit our website, solvecrimeswithrickandgavin.com. Yes. If you go to Amanda's case page, and you can get to it from the front page of the website.
That's right.
We have placed
we'll have a link below it in the video as well. In
the video, we'll have a link. Yeah. You can look at both autopsy reports and another report from Dr. Hoffman, who is a forensic.
Yeah, this is unprecedented stuff to have that information to be able to publicly show people. And again, we'll keep reiterating it. The more of you who are watching and listening get involved, the better the chances are that we get this thing solved. I mean, we've already been finding in other cases that we've been doing that people's involvement, reaching out to us, making comments, sending us a private message, giving us a call, whatever. We're actually getting movement on things. I mean, we have movement on a 50-year-old case, it was 50 years old, and we have movement. We're hoping that's the same thing here. So if you join Amanda's Army, there's nothing you have to do. I mean, there's no fee or anything, but you're just kind of signing up to be kept in the loop. And so we'll let you know when we need help on things, research or whatever. But the more people on that Amanda's Army list, the better the chances are that we get this thing solved.
Join Amanda's Army. There's a Join Now button right there on the case page, and look at those. Look at those autopsies, because Rick and I have looked them over and over and over and over again, and we're going cross-eyed on this. We're not quite sure that we're probably missing something that might be right in front of us.
Could be. So, I mean, people watching and listening may be in that field and may find something that we missed.
We would love your help. So please do that. And with that, I think it's time to wrap up the video, Rick. So thanks for Thanks for joining me, and thanks everybody. Yeah, this is Solve Crimes with Rick and Gavin.